The Hi, everyone. Welcome. This is the two-part series on long-term survivorship and weight management. We have three experts here who you'll hear from in a little bit, but I'm just going to go through a few housekeeping items first. So today you should have received a link for a private Facebook group just for the attendees of this group and for these sessions. And that is a place really for you between now and the second part of this series, which will take place on February 10th. And you can go ahead and join that. And with that, we will go ahead and get started. Melissa, you are up next.
Hi, everybody. Thanks so much, Megan, and thank you, Young Survival Coalition, for hosting this event. And thank you, everybody who's joining us today. And for those of you tuning in after the event, watching the recording, hi. I really miss being with everybody in person, but this will have to do for now. And I'm so grateful to have Dr. Bohem and my new friend, Coach Jen Mcrobbie, joining me tonight, too. This topic, dealing with weight gain, weight loss, weight management as a long-term survivor is a topic I know very well. Let me back up. I just jumped right in, blathering away. I'm a certified life coach. I became a coach a year after my breast cancer diagnosis. And I love working with particularly young women survivors and helping them make peace with their body and get their sexy groove back and really, build their confidence and move forward with life after diagnosis. So I was diagnosed when I was 36, and after 5 months of chemo, my lack of estrogen, my metabolism just totally crapped out. That and having surgeries, multiple surgeries, and that recuperation time, steroids during treatment, it just really wreaked havoc on my system. And I know for others, there's also the fallout from long-term medications, cancer recurrences, certainly impacting the metabolism. So, I had implants, and then 5 years later, I had complications and I explanted. So that was another factor. Suddenly my whole look changed. I'd look down and there was nothing hiding my fluffy midsection. So, I know the struggle. Before we move forward tonight and really dive into the great information Dr. Bohem's going to share with us, I wanted to talk about the approach, like how we could approach this next month and create a great container with you all so that we can use this time together and use the Facebook group with intention, really designing how we're going to interact with each other. So to start with, I'm going to suggest a couple of things that are important to me, but if there's other things that come up for you as I speak, feel free to enter them into the chat. For starters, I think it goes without saying that, anything that is shared in the chat here or in the Facebook group, we want to hold confidentiality. So that means not discussing what someone discloses in these sessions together or in the Facebook group. Normally, here's where if I were with a group of people, I would say, okay, raise your hand if you agree, and we'd get consensus, but here we are. Next, if you're participating in the Facebook group, I want you to think about what it means to really be a support for others. Sometimes people just need some space and permission to express themselves. And the person on the receiving end might mean well, but that commiserating that happens between people that have shared experiences, it's really easy to give unsolicited advice. And sometimes that's not needed. So just kind of check in with yourself and make sure the other person is seen and heard. And I like to say, try to refrain from unsolicited advice, like unless suggestions and feedback are really requested. So just kind of having that awareness. I know for me, like having somebody just say, I see you, I hear you, I get it, has been so powerful. And I want to acknowledge that, we're all here with this struggle, that the circumstances of having a diagnosis, this was not of our choosing. And there's definitely like trauma and hardship that came out of a diagnosis. And even though, for those of us here tonight, we're longer term survivors, there's still ripple effects. But we're here today because we're making a new choice. And I want to just plant the seed that we're leaning into what's possible. So as we go forward, I want you to think not only about the actions you're taking, but who you're being, who you get to be as you start making some changes to your choices, your habits, your diet, if that's your intention. So I have a couple of things that came to mind as I was preparing today, and feel free to borrow from any of these if they resonate. For example, I'm choosing to hold myself with compassion and hook into my wise, loving inner leader rather than that like mean, snarky, inner critic that's like the disciplinarian, like I can make choices when it comes to my eating habits and do that with discernment and feel like I'm making an empowered choice rather than, shaming myself into submission. So it's like a different way of approaching this. And I want to embrace a progress mindset that doesn't require perfection. I don't want to get bogged down in like, I've tried that. I've tried in the past, feeling like I didn't do it well enough. So why bother, right? That's not going to work. And so I thought we could do a little exercise together to take a moment to mindfully connect with our intentions and connect to the strength and wisdom of our own wise, loving inner leaders. And so I'd like to lead you on a short guided visualization if you're willing to join me. And I know that we can't see everybody, so you're only seeing, I think you can see Dr. Bohem and Jen and me. So to start, I just want to invite you to close your eyes or soften your gaze if that's more comfortable. Put down anything you're holding physically or energetically. And we're calling your energy back from the busyness of the day, calling it back from future plans, and just being really present in this moment. As you breathe, ask your belly to soften. Let your shoulders drop down away from your ears. We are now calling in the energy of your wise, loving inner leader to be really present and available to you right now. This is the part of you that can see the big picture, loves you unconditionally, and wants the very best for you. Feel the essence of your wise, loving leader living inside you. Maybe there's a color or a vibration that captures their essence. Maybe a visual comes to mind, and you can see how they stand or what they wear. This wise, loving inner leader looking at you with eyes of love and self-acceptance. And now ask the following questions and listen quietly for the answers. I'll pause a little to allow time for you to receive those answers. Ask your inner leader, what is no longer serving me? What can I release this year to support my health and well-being? What do I most need to remember right now? What strengths and qualities do I need to call on? What will support me in my efforts to lose weight or be healthy, whatever my health goals are? And lastly, ask your inner leader, is there a special nickname for you or a symbol of your essence? What is this name or symbol? And when you are ready, take a deep breath, breathing in this experience and exhaling, remembering what you need to remember. Taking another breath. Maybe you'd like to rub your fingers and hands together or stretch a little. And if you want, you can jot down any messages or words that came to you in this brief encounter with your inner leader. And in a moment, I'm going to turn things over to Dr. Bohem. But before I hand things off, I'm wondering, does anyone have an insight or a word that they're taking away from this encounter? Feel free to type it into the chat. And as you're maybe coming back to this present moment, I just want to mention I'll share these questions in the Facebook group later on. So if you'd like to explore them as journal prompts, maybe there's more that's waiting, that's percolating, waiting to come up. So let me expand my window here so I can see the chat better. Let's see, we've got self-compassion, restoration. Yes. All right. So I will, I'm going to keep an eye there, maybe, and some hope, release, peace. These are great. Ooh, it looks like a sparkle on the sea. Love yourself more. Strength, hope, consistency. Oh, I love it. Keep them coming. So I know we've got a lot to cover, so I'm going to pass the mic over to Dr. Bohem. And thank you so much again for joining us. And I look forward to continuing this conversation. And I'll see you at the end in the Q&A. All right.
Oh, thank you, Melissa. That was beautiful. What a great way to start. Really appreciate you. And definitely call me Elizabeth. No need for doctor, whatever. Okay, I'm going to share my screen, guys. Let's see. From the start. Okay. I think everybody can see that, right? Okay. So, so it's really wonderful being with you all tonight. Melissa, thank you so much for kicking this off. That was a really wonderful way to start, and really important to think about when we're talking about this topic, and when we're talking about nutrition, and is just learning and remembering to have that self-compassion with ourselves. So my background, about 22 years ago, I was 30. I had a triple negative breast cancer that was removed, went through chemotherapy, surgery, chemotherapy, radiation. And I have had a few really good friends who were connected with the Young Survivors Coalition. This organization means a lot to me, and I really appreciate everything you guys do. I practice functional medicine, so I'm board certified in family medicine. My undergraduate and graduate degree was in nutrition. I did a lot of work with weight over the years, and then got into functional medicine, which really, what functional medicine means is just looking at how we're each individuals, and all the systems in our body influence how the body is functioning. And it's important that we look for underlying root causes. It would take a long time to kind of go through that more in depth if you don't know much about functional medicine, but really to think about it this way is everybody is an individual. And in terms of breast cancer, we all have different things that influenced why our body developed this breast cancer, and what we each need to focus on to decrease our risk for it recurring. And so for some people, it may be detoxification and focusing on eliminating toxins from their body. Somebody else, it may be their microbiome. Somebody else, it may be stress management and meditation, and a combination of those things. And other people weight, So, we do know that weight is an important thing to pay attention to when we're talking about decreasing our risk of reoccurrence and decreasing risk of getting breast cancer first time or again, or even decreasing risk of other diseases, heart disease, stroke, cancer, other cancers. And we do know that after, as Melissa had sort of alluded to, after breast cancer, during and after breast cancer treatment, a significant number of women gain weight. They say 65 to 75% of us put on weight during and after treatment. And as Melissa started to talk about, there can be many reasons why that is, whether it's the steroids that were given with the chemotherapy that can absolutely cause weight gain, whether it was some of the medications that were used to lower estrogen in the body, long-term medications that impact going right into menopause, right? Shifting our hormones and going into menopause absolutely impacts how easy it is for us to gain weight and where we gain that weight when we do gain weight. As so many people know, when our hormones shift and our estrogen decreases, we're more likely to gain weight around the belly area. And I'm going to talk a little bit more about that belly weight because it's important for us to pay attention to. We also know that the treatment changes our routine, our day-to-day routine. It decreases the amount of time we may have for self-care. Our exercise routine may shift. And for so many reasons, that can result in a weight gain. So we're going to talk about what are the things we want to focus on and what can we do to get to a healthy weight. What I really want to focus on is body fat. And that's important to think about. It's not just the weight on the scale, it's really body fat. It's body fat that impacts risk of insulin resistance and inflammation. It's body fat that impacts how the body produces estrogen in the body and risk of disease. I put together a couple of these slides when I was doing my breast wellness DVD that I was just showing a picture of when I was talking about, in that DVD, I talk about the functional medicine approach to breast health. And I put together some of these slides for this just to sort of help us see and understand that connection with body fat and aromatase. And what this is showing here is that as our body fat increases, so does our aromatase, and so does the amount of estrogen our body produces, impacting risk. Our body fat also produces inflammatory markers that impact risk of multiple diseases, including cancer. And the body fat around our belly, the body fat that's connected to the viscera, the abdominal weight gain, is connected to insulin resistance. And multiple studies have shown the connection between insulin resistance and cancer risk, both increasing recurrence, decreasing survival, unfortunately. And we do know that insulin resistance is something we need to pay attention to. And what that means, I'm going to tell you a little bit more about what that means. So insulin is the hormone that is released when you eat a meal. So you eat a meal, the blood sugar goes up, your insulin goes up, and that insulin then gets the food to your muscles and to your cells so they can do what, you can get energy from the food. So insulin is a very important hormone. What insulin resistance means is that your body isn't listening to its insulin as well anymore for some reason. And when that happens, the body then makes more insulin to do its job. And that higher level of insulin is associated, as we were showing on the other slide, with cancer risk, but multiple different diseases. The other thing that higher level of insulin is associated with is weight gain, and weight gain around the belly. So not only when hormones shift, we gain more weight around the belly, but when we get more insulin resistant, we gain more weight around the belly, okay? And so that's important because we do know that many physicians, many oncologists will use medication that makes insulin more sensitive. One is called metformin. Maybe people have heard about it, because it has been associated with a decreased risk of cancer. Because we know that when insulin is in better control, when the insulin is lower in our body, cancer is less likely to grow. Okay, so what we want to do is say, okay, what can we do naturally with our diet choices, with our food choices that prevent our insulin from going as high? Okay, so How do you know if you have insulin resistance? You know, gaining more weight around the belly, feeling more tired, tired after a meal, feeling more cravings for sugary foods, hot flashes. There's many reasons we can have those, but that is one of them. And you can also check your waist to hip ratio to see if you have signs of insulin resistance. So for women, greater than 35 inches around the waist, or a waist to hip ratio of greater than 0.8. You can also have your blood sugar checked. Fasting blood sugar greater than 100 is a sign. And you can ask your physician to check your fasting insulin. Definitely greater than 12 is considered insulin resistant. We like that fasting insulin to be about 5. And so you can ask your physician to do that. If your blood pressure started to go up, or in your cholesterol pattern, you see a high triglycerides, low HDL level, that's also some signs that you may have insulin resistance. And so those are some things you can ask your physician about to see if you may have some insulin resistance. But can you improve it? That's really the question. Yeah, absolutely. There's a lot we can do to improve it. And the reason why I'm focusing today on insulin resistance, we're going to talk about some other things next week in terms of, or next month, sorry, in terms of food choices. But the reason I'm talking about insulin resistance this time is because it's so common. So when you're thinking about what foods you want to choose in your day-to-day life, you want to be choosing foods that help improve insulin sensitivity. So there's a lot of things we can do that makes our insulin work better. So our body recognizes it more easily in terms of our food choices. So fiber. Why does fiber help? Because fiber slows the digestion and absorption of your food. And so what happens is your blood sugar doesn't shoot up as quickly. And as a result, you don't get as much insulin released with each meal. That's why fiber is your friend. So remember, where do you get your fiber from? Your vegetables, beans and legumes, nuts and seeds, ground flaxseed really helps. Think about having some protein at every meal. One of the things we know is that carbohydrates are the food that causes the biggest insulin spike. So when you're making food choices, you want to think about, okay, when I want to avoid those carbohydrates that are quickly digested and cause that quick insulin spike. So of course you want to avoid the high sugary foods, but also anything with, a lot of flours or refined and processed carbohydrates also do the same thing. Breads and pastas and crackers and cookies will cause that spike in insulin. The other thing we know is instead, if you're choosing carbohydrates that have more fiber in it, right? So, a sweet potato would be a better choice, or brown rice as opposed to white rice, you're going to have less of that spike. Then if you pair your carbohydrates with protein, having some protein at each meal, you're going to have a slower digestion of your food. You're going to have less of a spike in blood sugar. You're going to have less of a spike in insulin. So having some protein at each meal is really important. And I always say you want to balance those protein sources, right? So you have maybe some protein coming from animal protein and some protein coming from vegetable protein. Then you'll get the best of both worlds. So you don't want too much of animal protein, but having some really helps with satiety and weight maintenance. So, maybe where do you get your protein from? Your fish, your chicken, your beef, your beans and legumes, your nuts and seeds, eggs, all great sources of protein, and have some at each meal. So when you sit down and put your food together, think, okay, what's my protein source here? Getting more fats in your diet. Fats don't cause insulin spikes. So that's great to know. So, getting the healthy fats from your omega-3 fats, sardines, salmon, walnuts, ground flaxseed, but just good healthy fats also really help. Eliminating trans fats, focusing on nutrient density, avoiding the refined and processed foods. There's other things that improve insulin sensitivity, and Jen's going to really delve into movement and exercise, but we know that every day that you exercise, you have better insulin sensitivity. Sleep's important. When you are sleep deprived, you have more insulin resistance. When we eat later in the evening, we have more insulin resistance. So, avoiding eating after dinner and getting good rest each night really helps with insulin sensitivity. And of course, stress, we all need to do that. BPA, interestingly, they've shown that BPA, that hard plastic, not only has been associated, of course, with increased risk of breast cancer, but also with insulin resistance, which is fascinating, and weight gain. So, here, just to remember, fiber is our friend. It helps us bind toxins and eliminate toxins, and helps with balancing blood sugar. And you're getting your fiber here, just to remember, vegetables. Cruciferous vegetables are wonderful because they also help detoxify, but the ground flaxseed is great. I always keep my flaxseed in the freezer, then I grind enough for a week or two, keep that in the fridge, and sprinkle that on, whether you have, I don't have dairy, so for me it'd be like a non-dairy yogurt, or put it on a salad or on a soup. Great source of omega-3 fats and great source of fiber. Nuts and seeds, beans and legumes. They also, of course, fiber really helps feed the good microbes in your gut. So let's just talk about the basics of food. We're going to delve into some other things next week, maybe talk a little bit about fasting and phytonutrients. Sorry, I keep saying next week, but it's next month. But the food basics, what to remember, avoiding foods that have labels on it. That's like my favorite thing to say. Why eat foods that have labels? Eat real food, foods that, that are plants, not foods made in a plant. Mark Hyman always says that, right? Eat real food, not too much, mostly plant foods where you get all your vegetables, right? Balance your blood sugar, really important. Each meal you want to have a good source of healthy fat and protein and fiber. Those three things will help us feel more satiated. We won't get as hungry as much, and that will help with preventing those spikes in insulin, which cause us to gain weight. Avoid the added sugars. Doesn't mean you can never have sugar, right? But avoid those packaged foods that are just stuffed full with added sugar most of the time. Really reach for phytonutrients. We'll talk a little bit more about phytonutrients next month, but really 8 to 12 servings of colorful vegetables and plant foods in your diet every day. And as I mentioned, that balance of animal and vegetable protein really helps most people with satiety and weight maintenance. Alcohol, unfortunately, we know there's an association with alcohol and cancer and weight. So for women, it's 5 or less drinks a week. And if you want to go deeper, this is I love Mark Hyman. I mean, I work with Mark Hyman at the Ultra Wellness Center in Lenox, Massachusetts, but I love this book, the 10-Day Detox Diet. It's really a great elimination diet. So if somebody's interested in looking at an elimination diet, this is also a good option for you. So I am going to now stop sharing my screen. I think I did that, and then send it over to Jen.
Thank you so much, Elizabeth. Oh my gosh, so much information to really understand and incorporate here. And I want to take all of that information and we're going to help you sort of put it all together in a package. But before we do that, before we go, before I even tell you who I am and what I do, I want you to do something. I want you to look around your room, and is there somebody there? Because if there is, I want you to make eye contact with them real quick and just give them that knowing nod that you're going to do something that they are going to think is crazy. Okay, you ready? All right. Now, push your chair back, everybody. Push your chair back, get away from the screen a little bit, and then we're going to stand up and we're going to just start to move our body a little bit. Just move your body, whatever feels good. We're going to jog in place. We're going to move our arms. Now, if standing up is too challenging for you, that's okay. Sit in your chair. We're going to move those arms. We're going to shake that body. Yeah, we're going to keep moving around. Exactly. Get that face in there, that screen, so you can see us. I can see Melissa and Elizabeth moving. I know you guys are too. Snap your fingers, smile. Oh, all right. Let's sit down. And look back at the screen. Guess what you just did? You just exercised. Can you believe that? I think so many of us go into this idea of exercise, especially after we've had a big trauma to our bodies like we've had, thinking that exercise means that we have to go for a run, we have to go for a swim, we have to go to an exercise class. And that is not at all what exercise has to be for you. But we'll talk about that a little bit more in a bit after I tell you a little bit about myself. I'm Jen Mcrobbie, and I am a fitness coach. I was diagnosed with breast cancer at 38. It was an estrogen positive, ERPR positive breast cancer, HER2 negative. I was stage 3A, so I was the lucky recipient of a mastectomy, chemotherapy, and radiation, so the trifecta. And with no family history, I was sort of looking at my life and wondering what in the world has happened and what in the world can I control moving forward? Because as young survivors, so all of us here should have been diagnosed after or before our 41st birthday. As young survivors, we have a slightly different view on what the future looks like than people who were diagnosed with cancer that were older. And it's because we're looking at 50, 60, or 70 more years of survival, right? And so we're looking at what we can do with our bodies to make sure that we are living our best lives. And I'm here to tell you there are 2 ways already today that you've learned. One is the visualization that Melissa started with. So learning how to visualize yourself and that future self, that future healthy self, that's step number 1. Step number 2 is understanding your body and how it relates to nutrition, your microbiome, all of the insulin resistance, all of that important information that Elizabeth shared with us. And the third piece to the puzzle is how do we move our body in a way that brings us joy and helps us create something that is sustainable? Because I don't know about you, but before cancer and before my 30s, really, I would exercise when I had something coming up. So for example, my wedding. Okay, I'm gonna get really fit, I'm gonna look good, I'm gonna look super thin, I'm gonna move. And then afterwards, I'm gonna eat and enjoy my life, and I'm gonna put back on all the weight, lose the muscle that I lost. And then 10 years later, something else big is gonna happen, like I'm gonna have my first child. Then I'm gonna start running again. I'm gonna lose my weight. And frankly, that yo-yo effect has more impact on your mind than it even does on your body. Here's an interesting study that was just released in Science magazine, and it was a meta study, 6,400 people from ages 8 days to 94 years old, men and women. And the study was looking at metabolism and how our metabolism sort of changes over our lives. And as you would expect, our metabolism is at its highest when we're children, of course, right? Because our body is burning, it's building things. And so we need lots of nutrition. But the interesting part about the study was that from ages 20 to 60, our metabolism is relatively set. So you're thinking to yourself, well, I don't know about you, Jen, but when I moved from 20 to 30, it was different. And then when I moved from 30 to 40, it was different. And then when I moved from 40 to 50, it was different. So how do we explain that? Well, this study basically goes into say that the vast majority of the change in our weight and our body composition is from our lifestyle choices. So it is less about just us aging and more about the changes that we've made in our lives to make ourselves less active, less conscious of the food we're putting in our body, and less mindful of how we approach our day energetically. So the important thing about exercise is knowing that you just have to move. So did you have fun sort of moving surreptitiously before, I started talking? If you did, maybe that's your form of movement. You probably notice I'm moving a lot, right? So I move a lot. That is something that I do naturally because my body feels good when I move. And Alinda, you asked an awesome question. I'm just going to go ahead and answer it. She says, how do we boost our metabolism? Well, the best way to boost your metabolism, build muscle. Okay. The more muscle you have in your body, the more your body works at rest. Okay. So if we take two people that are 120 pounds, okay, let's be realistic. Let's take two people that are 160 pounds. Okay. Two people that are 160 pounds. If one person has 70 pounds of weight on them, and then the rest is body fat and bones and water, and one person has 50 pounds of muscle on them, the person that has 70 pounds of muscle is going to burn more just while sitting and watching her favorite show on Netflix. So that's why exercise is such an important component. And we can build muscles in ways that we don't think we can. A lot of people think you have to pick up the heaviest weights, you have to run the farthest distance, you have to do all of this crazy stuff. And there is another study that was just released. And by the way, I'll provide links to all these studies in the Facebook group, so make sure you join. But another study was just released that said that how we react to certain types of exercise, some of it is, that part is genetic. So you know how you have some friends that can run for 5 days in a row and feel great, and then you go for a run for 20 minutes and you feel broken for the next 30 days? Well, some of that is based on your genetics. And so it is very important to find a way to exercise that works for you. And so what does that mean? That means you have to try new things. Oh, that's so hard, guys, I know. And here's the reality. After cancer, the last thing I wanted to do was new things, because I felt like I couldn't control them. And I suspect that a lot of us here have control freak tendencies now, because we want to know what we can control moving forward. But I would like to introduce to you the idea that trying something new is actually a way of creating control in your life, and you getting ready to bring something into your life in a way that you get to dictate how that happens. So how did it happen for me? I was, fairly overweight and unhappy when I got diagnosed with cancer, and then all the chemo, the drugs, the steroids and everything, it made me even unhealthier. So I went back to the methods that I used when I was younger. I would try to run, I would try to do at-home exercise, and none of it was really working. I just wasn't motivated. So for me, the key was finding group fitness. And group fitness has changed, ladies. For those of you that watched the videos in the 70s with the aerobics, it has changed considerably. My primary job right now is as a coach for Orange Theory Fitness. And Orange Theory is really what changed my life. One of the things that happened after all of my surgeries was I developed lymphedema in my right arm. I had a right side mastectomy. And the doctors were telling me at the time that I may not ever be able to lift more than 8 pounds on that right side again. And let me tell you, that was depressing and upsetting and annoying, because I had 2 kids and they both weighed more than 8 pounds. And by God, I was going to be picking up my children at a minimum. So I had some friends that were part of Orange Theory, and I reluctantly joined. But let me tell you why I joined. I joined because I went out to lunch with one of my friends, and she took off her coat, and her arms looked so good, you guys. They looked so good. She had this beautiful shoulders. And I said, "Where did you get that?" And she said, "That's from Orange Theory, Jen. I've been telling you about it." So a great way to find something new to introduce to your life that might become a lifestyle, might even become a job for you like it did for me, is to listen to what your friends are doing. And you're right, Melissa, community is such a big motivator for women wanting to get back into exercise. Another resource that I want to point out now before we move on, that I will also put in the Facebook group, is a group called Too Unstoppable. And it was also started by a cancer survivor, and she does online Zoom fitness classes, all survivors. You're paired with someone so that you have someone to work with as you find your new exercise modality. But before I close, I want to draw attention to something that Elizabeth said that might have made you panic a little bit, because it made me panic a little bit when I saw it, and then I did the math. On one of the slides, it said you need 40 minutes of exercise a day to optimize your health. And are you thinking to yourself, girl, I don't have 5 minutes. How am I going to find 40 minutes? Well, another cool study, let me find the information just so I can quote the correct information for you. But a new study was released that talked about the brief bouts of exercise and whether or not, in the past, we always said exercise had to be about 10 minutes in order to really be beneficial. Well, this new study shows it doesn't matter. Any bit of exercise from 30 seconds on is going to be beneficial in your day. So let's break this down. 40 minutes of exercise. If we're up and moving for about 10 minutes or for 10 hours a day, that's 4 minutes per hour. And that is 8 30-second dance breaks. So do you think you might have some time for 8 30-second dance breaks, or 8 30-second push-ups while that water is boiling in your kitchen, or running around with your kids, or even chasing after them, telling them to clean their room, or picking up your socks, doing your laundry? All of those things are exercise and ways that we can get our bodies moving. And I'm really excited over the next month in the Facebook group to start to share with you guys different ways that you can start to move and maybe incorporate more physical activity in your body and in your day. But I want you to just take these ideas, take them home, think about it. And then when we start with the Facebook group, let's just start exchanging ideas with each other on the ways that we love to move. And maybe we can help not only encourage ourselves to get more active, but maybe also encourage some other people along the way, because community really is the best thing to get us moving, to get us healthy, and to get us focused. So with that, we have about 30 minutes left of this time. And I know everyone is itching to answer your questions. If you have any questions for any of us specifically, you can put them in the chat or in the QA. If you just want to ask questions, we will sort of field them for you. I know there's one here about Elise was asking if this is going to be a monthly class. And I think, Megan, you said you wanted to address that question. So maybe we can have Megan address that first.
Sure, and we'll provide additional information at the end as well. This is a 2-part series, so there'll be a second session February 10th, and you'll all receive that information tomorrow in an email with the link to register. And we do ask that you re-register so that you'll receive the appropriate login for the February session.
Awesome. Thanks. So I'm going to just go ahead and address Alyssa's question because it just popped up in the Q&A. And Alyssa says, I used to do weightlifting 2 to 3 times per week for 30 minutes per session. I've recently changed to 4 to 5 times per week, but for shorter durations, 10 to 20 minutes. In terms of building muscle, is one approach better than the other? And that is a great question. So based on that study, you get all of the health benefits from doing the shorter duration. So great job, Alyssa. As far as what it takes to build muscle, it just takes getting to muscle failure. So if you're able to lift heavy and concentrated for that 10 to 20 minutes, you're getting the exact same benefits out of that 30-minute, those 30-minute sessions that you used to do. And I personally like working out more often than less. And so the 4 to 5 days, because of the mental health benefits that can come from moving your body. So you get a benefit, obviously, physically, but there are some mental benefits to taking that 10 to 20 minute time break 4 to 5 days a week for you and just for you. So keep lifting heavy, Alyssa, and we can talk a lot more about the types of exercise you're doing too, if you're interested in it as we move forward.
Why don't I jump into the questions that are here for me? So no, I agree. I think that one of the best things about moving and getting outside, getting into nature, doing resistance exercise, all of that stuff is just is also just the benefit from the mental health perspective. And Jen, that was great. Just explaining how when you increase your lean muscle mass, that increases your metabolism. And when you increase your muscle, when you increase your lean muscle mass, that improves your insulin sensitivity, as we were talking about, so, and that's really important to pay attention to, not just the pounds on the scale. So I have a question here. What are considered inflammatory foods? So, a few things just to break it down. Inflammatory foods are foods that are really refined and processed, essentially. So refined and processed foods can cause inflammation in the body multiple different ways. So just think of it as when you go for whole foods, you stay away from refined and processed foods, you're less likely to get inflammatory foods. In addition, certain foods are inflammatory for some people. So some people will feel poorly when they consume foods. A good example may be dairy. They may get some asthma or some breathing issues, some congestion, some itchy skin. And if that is the case, if you react to a food like that, then that means that food is causing inflammation for you. So one way, the reason why I showed the 10-day detox blood sugar solution diet was because sometimes people do elimination diets to figure out what foods are inflammatory for them. And then anything that causes a fast spike in blood sugar is essentially inflammatory. So a high sugary meal, lots of refined and processed carbohydrates is inflammatory for people in general. Making sure you've got, when you're balancing your fats, you're getting a lot of the healthy fats, the omega-3 fats which are found in the ground flaxseed, fatty fish, sardines, salmon, walnuts, right? Though avocado, those are anti-inflammatory fats. So those are great to incorporate because they also, remember, that's what those fats also help us feel more satiated. The question about there was a second question about the 35-inch waist rule for insulin resistance. How does this account for people of different heights and sizes? Absolutely important. That's why there's two recommendations there. So when you're checking your waist circumference, I'll get into the 35 in a second, but I'm just going to remind us how we check our waist circumference. The way to do it is to find your lowest rib, okay, and then the top of your hip bone. And then in between your lowest rib and the top of your hip bone, dead set in the center, that's considered your waist. So when you're doing your waist circumference, that's where you want the tape measure to be. So find your lowest rib, then the top of the hip bone, and then in between, keep the tape measure level to the floor, right? Horizontal to the floor. And that's your waist circumference. It's not always around your belly button. It depends on your size. Then to find your hip circumference, you pretty much, I always say, find the biggest hip circumference you can get because it just makes your numbers look better. But essentially, it's over this greater trochanter, which is the side of your hip bone, but just really the biggest hip circumference you can find because then your numbers are going to look better. So for people who are smaller in size, it is important to do the waist to hip ratio because you may not have a waist circumference that's greater than the 35 inches, but if your waist to hip ratio is greater than 0.8 for women, then that's considered at risk for insulin resistance. So hope that was helpful. Okay, what other questions we got here? What do you recommend to increase your energy to work out again, or the mental energy, motivation to make any changes to lifestyle?
Melissa, what do you think about that? I mean, I know I have thoughts, but Melissa is the queen of helping people build motivation. How do we get that again?
I think to recognize that you have a block, just even naming it and saying it and admitting it to yourself is a great start. And getting really curious, like what's going on here? Like, what is it? Like I wrote in the comments there, that community is something that motivates me. So what is it that's going to motivate me? Like, what are my values? What do I need to plug into? I love nature too. You mentioned that, Liz. Like I love being outside. So that can get me going. I love animals. I love my dog. So that gets me going. So find the things that you really love and you enjoy, because you want to get out of thinking this is a chore, something I have to. You mentioned, Jen, too, the future self. So it's like, I want to, I get to do this. And I want to do it because fill in the blank, right? Like, I want to do this because, one thing that I did that really helped motivate me and get me like getting my vitality back after cancer, it was, I think, a year after I signed up for the Avon 39 and I trained for that. And it was really hard. You end up walking over the course of a weekend. You do like 39-mile walk, and it was all around Manhattan. But every walk was longer and longer and longer. And I wore through 2 pairs of shoes and I had crazy blisters. But every step I took, I trained myself to think that I was walking towards health and walking away from cancer. And so having like a visual construct about what you're walking towards can really be a great motivator.
That gave me chills to even think about, and I noticed in the chat, Alyssa says small, achievable, but progressive fitness goals helped her get back into exercise. And earlier, Susie, you said something about you were a gym rat before cancer and now you just have never gotten back into it. And I think part of the problem is we are visualizing our past self instead of our future self. Right. So Susie, you're looking at that woman who used to go to the gym, 1 to 2 hours a day, 6 days a week, lifting, 80-pound chest presses and 120 deadlifts or whatever. Right. And you're thinking, I'll never get back to that. And maybe the goal shouldn't be to get back to that because that's in the past. So small and achievable goals. What can you do today to move towards that future self that Melissa was visualizing for herself? What does that future self look like for you? Is that future self back to lifting really heavy weights? If so, you have to start with the 8 pounds.
Jen, I'm so glad you said that, because I've been stuck on something right now. Like, I live in New York. COVID is like going crazy. It is everywhere. I was like right on the cusp of like getting a gym membership and getting back to the gym. And like, my son's finally back in school. He's 11 now. And we did like 14 months of homeschooling. And I'm like, okay, I was just about to take that leap and it's off the table for a while, but I don't need to get stuck on that idea, right? Like I have to find like, what is this moment calling for? And so I loved your invitation for like 8 mini dance breaks all day long. I love that. I love like having a fun Spotify playlist, and I'm going to totally.
Yes. So that is another thing we need to do. We need to put together a joint Spotify playlist in the Facebook group for everyone to have fun music to listen to. But I will tell you that something that I'm working on in therapy personally is this idea of cognitive flexibility and not seeing things as black and white. Right. And I think as survivors, and yes, I'm 8 years out and I'm still in therapy, and it's the most wonderful thing in the world. So those of you that are questioning it or wondering if you should, the answer is yes, you should. But one of the things I think that happens is we tend to go to that black and white thinking. We see things as good or bad. So exercise is good, not exercising is bad. That's not really true. Right? There are times when not exercising is necessary for our mental health, for our bodies to recover, to rejuvenate from exercise. And then there's times when exercise can be bad when we do it to excess, where we injure ourselves or we're excluding the things that are important in our lives. Joanne was elaborating on muscle fatigue and how you build muscle. And so the way muscles work, the way the body works, is you actually have to tear down muscle and then your body rebuilds it. And when it rebuilds it, they get stronger. So muscle fatigue is what you feel when you go to pick something up and you think, ooh, that's kind of sore or that hurts. That's what muscle fatigue is. Muscle fatigue is not falling down the stairs because you did so many squats that you can't go up them. It is a form of muscle fatigue, but that's not an enjoyable form, in my opinion. I like to be able to lower myself to the toilet instead of having to hold on when my legs are too steady. So for muscle fatigue, I can point you to more stuff in the group, Joanne, but essentially your best bet is either to go light weights for many reps, 12 to 15 repetitions, and do that as many times as you can until you can't do that many reps anymore. Or if you're stronger, to go heavier weights, and by heavy, I mean 15 to 20 pounds or higher, and aim for 6 to 8 reps or more. And then you can sort of make adjustments from there. So I hope that answered your question in regards to all that.
Yeah, you
know.
Oh, you go.
Nope, go.
I was just going to say, I think that I think you're taught, what you're focusing on in terms of balance is so important. I know for myself, that was one of the biggest lessons that cancer taught me, that I had to learn how to listen to my body, which I never did before, and always have to be reminded about listening to your body and trusting your body again. And that's really important. There was questions here about the Mediterranean diet. The Mediterranean diet is phenomenal. I definitely recommend the Mediterranean diet. There was questions about dairy. There is some concern regarding dairy because of the hormones in dairy. Even if it is organic, it is high hormone. And so it is often one of those foods I pull away, especially with hormone sensitive cancers, but it is one of the, people really have a hard time with tolerating dairy very commonly, both with sensitivities, allergies, and then also digesting the lactose part. So it is probably one of the most common food sensitivities, food allergies, food intolerances that we see. And then of course, there's all the hormones in dairy as well. The question about vegetarian sources of protein, beans and legumes, nuts and seeds, edamame, soy is fine if it's a whole food, non-GMO source of soy, not too processed. I don't really do soy protein powders. Somebody asked about collagen protein powder. Sometimes I use it, but I love getting people to get protein from their food. And then food sensitivity testing, we use them all the time. They're tons of false positives and false negatives. But one of the things that's elimination diets are free and a great way to see if you have food sensitivities. And sometimes we do testing. I just tried to answer a bunch really quickly.
I know you guys have so many questions. I'm so excited. This is amazing. Alyssa asked if lifting weights helped with my lymphedema, and you bet. So here is the short of it. The way physical therapists explained to me, Alinda, was that you need to massage your lymph system from the inside out. So those of us that have lymphedema, many of us have learned lymphatic massage, which is a way to move the lymph fluid away from the areas where we had lymph nodes removed into areas where we have lymph nodes so we can clear it. Well, massage is one way. But how can I massage what's behind my chest wall? I cannot, but I can, right? Doing chest presses, doing shoulder presses, push-ups, lifting weights. So when I first began working out after cancer, I had to wear a lymphedema sleeve every time I worked out, every time I was in a car, every time I flew on a plane. And luckily, for the most part, I never progressed past stage 1. So I could essentially feel, and there was a small change in my arm, but it wasn't ever permanent. But now, through slowly reintroducing weights and slowly working from those light weights all the way up to the heavier ones that I lift now, I no longer have to wear my lymphedema sleeve. So to me, that's like one of the biggest wins of fitness post-cancer.
Organic soy milk matcha lattes. Well, you got the matcha, so you got the green tea, which has the EGCG, which is anti-angiogenic, which is awesome and wonderful. I would just say no sugar added organic soy milk. Just really making sure if you are using the alternative milks that you are getting organic and with soy, especially non-GMO, and then no sugar added. Really important because they add a lot of sweeteners to those.
Yeah. I know corn is a big issue, right, Liz? Like corn syrup and the GMO corn, it's in a lot of processed foods.
It is, and it's in a lot of processed foods. people end up reacting to it a lot is definitely an inflammatory food. The high fructose corn syrup and then corn syrups and processed food is going to be pro-inflammatory for the body. And so, I love this idea of just avoiding food that has labels on it. Like most of the time we don't need that, you'll be amazed when you start paying attention to it. It's like, oh, do I need to get that spaghetti sauce in a jar? No, I can just get some tomatoes and make spaghetti sauce. And I know it takes time and effort, but it's a great time for us to say, well, okay, how can I learn how to prepare foods in a healthier way,
Mm-hmm. Something I was thinking about, as I know we're getting close to the end here, we've got about 15 minutes to go, and there may be some more questions coming in. But for those of you that are going to join the Facebook group, and I hope everybody does, and want to really start to deepen our relationships, get to know each other, really support each other. So to think about, what are your goals this year, this month? How do you want to use this next month? I know Jen, we were last time when we had a little prep meeting, we were talking about SMART goals. So I don't know if you want to speak to that, Jen, but how can we set some intentions and start to create some habits to really support those goals?
Well, I put together some fun graphics, so I'm so glad you brought that up, Melissa. I put together some fun graphics that I'm going to put in the Facebook group that talk about SMART goals. And SMART is an acronym, if you haven't heard it, that a lot of people use for goal setting. And SMART, each word or each letter represents a different word. The S is specific, the M is measurable, the A is attainable, the R is relevant, and the T is time bound. And so in some of these graphics, I have examples of what is a specific goal, because a lot of times, we say, oh, I want to lose weight, right? Well, is that really specific? I don't know. What does lose weight mean? What does that look like for you? Is it measurable? I want to lose weight. Well, is half a pound the weight that you want to lose, or do you want to lose 15 pounds? So we can get more in depth about goal setting and the types of goals that will help you feel like you have you've reached your goals. And because again, like we brought up earlier, small attainable goals that you then progress, that's the way you get better at anything. At eating better, at being better at your job, at being happier during the day, at moving your body. Any of these things take small steps. Well, we don't want to hear that.
And this could be like a real fun invitation, and not to feel overwhelmed by it, but even what excites you. Like I want to try to have eat my rainbow tomorrow. I want to have something, a fruit and vegetable from every spectrum of the rainbow, every part of it. What would excite you or light you up? So I don't know, Liz or Jen, do you have any goals that you want to share for this month or as you kick off the new year?
Yeah, well, I think that's, one of the things that I always want to do is 2 more dance classes. So I love to move, I love to exercise, but I love to take dance classes. So, and like you were saying, Melissa, it's a challenge because we're all ready to go back into the class, but now you're like, okay, maybe I'm just going to do one online. So, here's a SMART goal. You could say, okay, I'm going to start doing a Zumba class every Friday at 7 a.m. with my friend Alex, or you know what I mean? And that is a SMART goal. You've got the day, the time, something you can do. It's going to fit in my schedule. I love Zumba anyway, or some sort of a dance class, right? And you want to make it as specific as possible, because that really helps us then actually do it.
Mm-hmm.
Well, and then you attained it, right? If you actually showed up for that 7 p.m. class with Alex in tow and you had a great time afterwards, you're like, dang, look at me. I achieved my goal. So that is an important part of goal setting. It's not just setting them, it's making sure we can achieve them and check off that box. I'm a list maker. So I love being able to check things off.
Yeah.
I love that. Me too. I want to see lots of brags on this Facebook group. Like, bring it. Like, if you did it, because accountability is not only what you will do and when you'll do it, but how will you know, or how will the other people around you know? How will your peers in the Facebook group know? So get on there and be like, I did my half hour, dance class, or I did my Zumba. I did my dance breaks today. I ate my vegetables today. Like, I want to hear it. So we can really see each other.
Megan asked a question about, when we're all on our computers so much, working remotely, sitting so much, how have we been handling that? I think that is something that I've worked really hard to incorporate into my day. I have a standing desk at work. I can stand at home. I've set up a little office setting for me where I can stand and do my work. And it's really been helpful, not just so I'm not sitting so much and because I'm moving more, and that's really good. But also I've noticed that with all the sitting in certain positions that I started getting all these work injuries, this arm would hurt there. From this surgery here, blah, 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 I got this side effect here. So changing my position at work all the time is really helpful, where I'm standing more. I have different ways of working in different positions. I think those standing desks are phenomenal and really helpful.
Well, and that actually helps address a couple of questions. A couple of questions have popped up, like, how do you manage joint pain, muscle pain that comes from medications? Like, we're talking AIs, we're talking not moving, those things. And then the big finisher question is, how do you learn to listen to your body again when it's in pain all the time? And that visualization that Melissa led us through in the beginning is actually something that it seems cheesy. I will say, like, in the beginning, I used to think, oh, visualization, that's just cheesy. I don't need that. But the reality is, visualization doesn't have to take 5 minutes of your time. In fact, it doesn't even have to take 2 minutes of your time. If you take 30 seconds before your workout and just say to yourself, I'm going to listen to what my body has to say, and then start moving. Now, modalities to help with pain that we're having, anything low impact. So bike riding, swimming, weightlifting can be done, and it can be done in a seated position. There are lots of people who are disabled that are able to do weightlifting with their upper body or their lower body when they don't have the ability on the other side. So you have to be open to exploring ways that look different than what you have been brought to believe is exercise.
And if I could just add on to that too, Jen, like, working with a physical therapist was so helpful for me. Like, help break down like some of that scar tissue and give me like really specific, gentle exercises to help regain strength. And also, if you can, invest in a personal trainer, somebody who can help you modify exercises or get comfortable using equipment that you maybe haven't used since you've had surgery.
Yeah, and for me, like, my body hurts all the time. I can give you all sorts of reasons why, but we don't even need to go into those. But I do know when I do move, it feels better. When I do that dance class, it feels better. When I go for the hike outside and walk, it feels better. When I do my yoga postures, it just feels better. You sometimes when it hurts, you don't want to do it, but then when you do, you realize, okay, I feel better. Things loosen up. And people find when they change their diet, it feels better too.
Oh, changing my diet was pretty critical. I'll be honest to you guys. The movement was like really big and important for me, but I didn't really start feeling good in my skin until I changed my diet. And that changed so many things. And now I feel good overall. And then I take that good feeling into my workouts and I can have better workouts for it. And that's why I say they're all so interchangeable. It's important to have all three legs of that pyramid. You can't just have one because, you really need the other two to support you. That's why there's three of us here.
For me, gratitude changed my mind, changed my body, changed everything. It helped when I started keeping a gratitude journal and writing down every day those three things I was grateful for. It really helped. It helped the fear go away. It helped me feel more happy. It helped just being more satisfied with life, and it helped my body feel better.
Yeah, what you're paying attention to. It's a really powerful tool. It's
Yeah.
easy though when you're stuck in like you've had trauma, you've had pain and something hard in your life to like that is at the forefront. You're trying to recover from that. And so you're framing things as like, I don't want that, or this is bad, but you're still focusing on that thing. Right. And so having gratitude practice or visualizing the future self, which is something you could even just do in the shower. Make that your thing. Like when you're washing your hair, I'm just like going to visualize my future self. I'm going to have a little date with her. So
Yeah, I like that.
My gosh, I can't believe we're already at 8:12, you guys.
No, this has been so fun. I've loved spending this time and really getting to know you, Jen. This is kind of our first time playing together, and thank you so much for joining us again, Liz. I know we've worked together in a couple other support groups, and I'm really excited. I hope everybody comes back. I know Megan's here to tell us. I believe February 10th, right? That's our next date. Okay.
Yep. So the last part of this two-part series, but it's not the end. We have the Facebook group to all chat and talk. Is February 10th, same time. You will receive an email tomorrow with the link to register for that session. And we do ask that you re-register so that you receive the correct login for the February 10th event. And also, I know you've heard us talk about this Facebook group a lot throughout this session, and that is really just a place for you all to continue the conversation, to ask questions to these wonderful individuals here, to motivate each other. As Jen said, she'll be posting a couple of helpful images and documents and things like that. And we really just hope that you'll continue to all connect there. And I'll put that in the chat again, but you will also be receiving the link via email with the registration for February 10th. And also when this webinar closes out, you'll get a brief survey to complete. And we just ask if you have a couple of minutes to fill that out. We'd love to hear from you, what you thought of tonight, and if there's anything specifically you would love to hear on February 10th. And we'll make sure to share that with everyone else. And that's it. Have a great night and be well.
Bye, everybody.
Bye, everyone.
Bye.